Mr. President, today the Senate is voting on whether to take a few more inches off the little guy. And I say that because we can tell what this debate's all about by just looking at the morning newspapers. All over those newspapers, you saw ads taken out by some of the biggest businesses in the country. And it's pretty easy to see why, Mr. President, because with this vote for the so-called Marketplace Fairness Act, what you have is big businesses being given the ability to force, mind you, new regulations onto the startups, onto the small businesses. And that's what this bill has always been about, Mr. President. The big businesses have physical presence. They already pay taxes. The people that we've said for the last 15 years we care about are the startups, the people who are just trying to get off the ground, who have the dream of one day being big. And with this proposal that we'll vote on in an hour, I fear that what we're going to do is crush a lot of those startups, a lot of those small businesses, because not only will they have new regulations, those small businesses will have new legal regimes, new audits by out-of-state regulators, new legislators, new governors, new court systems, new accountants, new software, new consultants, and new lawyers. So what I hope we'll do is ensure as this process goes forward, we really think through the implications of what's being done here, because on every count, Mr. President, its coerciveness, its discriminatory nature, the fact that it gives a leg up to foreign retailers, it in effect repudiates a lot of what we have done over the last 15 years to build a sensible policy that will ensure what I call prosperity for both bricks and clicks. I'm sure that's what the President of the Senate wants. That's what we want in Oregon. We want our brick and mortar stores to prosper. We want our online stores to prosper. And what this bill does is it precipitously overturns the law of the land upheld by the Supreme Court. It would, in unprecedented fashion, stipulate that state and local governments have taxing authorities over businesses that are located thousands and thousands of miles away. Now, the sponsors are quick to point out that the court allowed that Congress could enact this sort of extraterritorial taxation. But, Mr. President, as the Senate has seen again and again, just because government can doesn't mean government should. So we're going to continue this debate. It will not be done today. One of the central discussion points in this debate going forward will be the damage that this bill in its present form does to the idea of state sovereignty. Proponents of the bill say that the measure is about promoting states' rights, but the reality is that it is a coercive affront to state sovereignty. If any state doesn't wish to subject their business to out-of-state government tax collectors, the MFA tells them, in effect, get lost. The MFA enables the state of Indiana or the state of South Dakota to require online businesses located in New Hampshire to collect sales taxes on their behalf. So I'll repeat that. This so-called Marketplace Fairness Act could require New Hampshire, a state that does not have a sales tax, New Hampshire businesses to collect sales taxes for goods or services provided to consumers in Indiana or South Dakota and send that money to those states. It enables California and New York to collect taxes from businesses located in Florida or Texas. And finally, Mr. President, because I know we're in morning business, I think this steers the internet towards a dangerous path. It would, in effect, endorse the notion that Internet entities should be required to enforce laws outside their home jurisdiction. Foreign countries have long pressed that notion. Foreign countries have specifically pushed that notion that the Internet ought to cede to their control. As it is already, many countries are seeking to put the United Nations in charge of the Internet's regulator-in-chief. And essentially, if you look at the philosophical foundation of this proposal, it really endorses that worldview. The Senate is being asked to consider schemes to allow states and localities to essentially nationalize their taxes, but tomorrow the Senate may be asked to consider similar schemes to enforce laws and regulations. And I will tell you what really concerns me about that, Mr. President, is it could be laws and regulations about content and other issues that are important to the powerful and well-connected. And make no mistake about it, Mr. President, that who is pushing this bill today. You open up those morning newspapers, and it wasn't the little guy, the person who doesn't have PACs and big political committees, who was buying ads in the morning newspapers. It was the powerful and the well-connected. And it seems to me the last thing this body should do is jeopardize the democratizing power of the Internet and technology through legislation like this. I believe that the substance of this bill is deeply flawed. There have been efforts, I know, to improve it. At one point, I see my colleague from Illinois here. He wanted to take the bill that I wrote years ago, the Internet tax freedom legislation, with colleagues from both sides of the aisle, and he wanted to put it into this bill. And of course, the Internet Tax Freedom Act runs contrary to this bill, because this bill allows discrimination. It specifically says that you can require online retailers to do things that you wouldn't require of offline retailers. I mean, the offline retailer doesn't have to chase somebody all across the country trying to figure out where they're going to consume a particular kind of product. So we're asking things of online retailers that we're not asking of offline retailers. And so I understand why the senator from Illinois wanted to take a bill that has been a big success for both bricks and clicks retailers and put it into this bill. I compared it to, in effect, trying to dump sugar into a very, very bitter cup of coffee. You can't get healthy with this bill in its present form, Mr. President. It is a deeply flawed piece of legislation. This debate is going to continue. I urge colleagues to vote no on the bill. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.